Recording is started.
Thank you. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is July 12th, 2023 at 10:02. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's having a good day so far on this lovely Wednesday. As a reminder, if you're signing in, I see we have some more people coming in. Please don't forget to sign in so that we can get attendance at the meeting. Daryl has put a link to the sign in the chat. And if everybody's ready, we will go ahead and get started. And as usual, we'll start with Tracy, if you're ready, for the issue tracker.
Absolutely. These are the ones that are left over from last month. Not a whole lot has changed as far as Pitkin and Vail. We still are waiting for the PSAPs to schedule some time with Motorola. When they're ready to do that, Intrado and Lumen have the resources to hop on and assist. I haven't received an update, and I know Jeff Winkleman wasn't able to attend today as far as the Mo circuit for El Paso to Cheyenne Mountain. I believe that is up and working, but Jeff is traveling and in training all week, so I didn't get an answer from him unless anyone on the call from those locations can confirm. But the last I heard, it was up. I just don't have that confirmation from my sales team. Next one on there, I haven't heard anything else from Matt. I know we had Intrado do a lot of research for you, Matt, if you're on. And this is the case where all of them that Intrado had researched were issues and problems that needed to be dealt with by the carriers directly. So like Intrado can let them know that there's an issue there, but you guys usually have better luck pushing the carriers along than we do. I haven't heard any additional issues on that one, but it's not going to be something that we can do anything with other than monitor and raise a flag with the carriers.
This is Matt. We appreciate your time and Intrado's time in researching that. We figured it was going to come to you at some point anyway, and so this sort of cleans the slate on your side of things. But it does sound like this issue is growing, and we're not the only ones. There's been other discussion in other states as well, and maybe Daryl or Jennifer can speak to that.
Yeah, this is Daryl. So I actually have a meeting with the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau representatives at the FCC on, I think it's next week. Yeah, I'm not seeing it on my calendar, but I know it's on my calendar somewhere among all of the other meetings. But I do have I have an appointment with them to talk about this issue, and I sent an email out over the out to the local 911 agencies, both the governing bodies as well as the PSAP contacts, to see if anybody else can provide any data like Matt did for Wesco. So far, I haven't received a whole lot other than some anecdotal confirmation that yes, this is happening at the local level, and other people are hearing the same thing that we've heard, which is that it has to do with 911 calls being handled by third-party roaming carriers that don't have roaming agreements with the primary carrier for that customer. So I'll be talking to the FCC about that. I'm also going to see if I can get Kentucky to join that call, because Kentucky was the one that initially recognized that this issue was happening, and they reached out to the FCC previously. So hopefully we can get some action through the FCC. My hope is to convince them that this is something they need to bring up directly with the carriers and tell them that they need to start providing 911 data, even if they don't have a roaming agreement. Or the FCC may need to take additional action in the future through a rulemaking, which hopefully they'll do it voluntarily, because those rulemakings take a long time, but that's probably the route the FCC would have to take.
It does take a little bit of number crunching effort at the local level, but the way we generated our numbers was looking at all of our wireless PANIs associated to all of our wireless shell records in MSAG. So your MSAG coordinators could potentially dig these stats up for yourselves, for your PSAPs and authorities to add more data to the discussion, if you want to call it that.
And Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but you almost have to correlate that with a CAD record or have some sort of log from the PSAP, because they need to confirm with the caller that the caller actually has a valid phone number for that phone. Isn't that right?
You
Or is there a way
have
to tell that from the records?
So and Alex, Metz's 911 data coordinator, Alex, can speak more specifically to how he pulled those stats, but I don't believe that we correlated every single one of those calls with Wesco. We did it purely by looking at the stats.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on that? Okay, Tracy, if you want to continue, that'd be great.
Absolutely. On the last one there, as far as we're kind of revisiting the 911 transfer capability across state lines. We had said we would look into that once the ESInet project was completed. Jeff does have a meeting internally set up, Jeff Winkleman, on the 25th of July, so that we can bring him up to speed. As a reminder, Jeff is new to the sales side and the 911 side for Colorado since Wes moved on. So he did want to have some time to wrap his arms around this one because he hasn't been involved yet. So we will get some information to you guys on our next session for that one, as far as project status, next steps, and what we think we can or can't do. And I think those are the only ones that rolled over from June, unless anyone on the phone has others that need to be added that maybe didn't reach my desk to get put on here.
Sounds good. Does anybody have anything?
Tracy, I just have a quick question on the Pitkin and Vale call routing issue. Is there anybody on the call from either Pitkin or Vale right now? Okay, I'm not hearing anything, but I know they've been working on this for a very long time, and I know it's largely a matter of coordinating, getting the right people on the call from Motorola as well as CenturyLink. So that's difficult, but I just, do you know what the holdup is still at this point for them getting this resolved, or is it on Motorola's side? I don't want to necessarily be pointing fingers at anybody, but I just want to see if you have any thoughts on what could be done to move this along for them.
Yeah, it has been a long time, Daryl. You're right. And the last update I have is that Motorola would be scheduling. I trying to look to see. Andrew, are you on the call by chance? And have you heard anything on Pitkin and Motorola? I don't think. Oh yeah, Andrew's on. I don't think we have heard anything on that one.
I'm here. Yeah, and no, I haven't heard anything.
But Daryl, let me circle back. I'll pull up the last email that I had that had Motorola and it had Vale and Pitkin and Lumen people, and I'll ask for a follow-up and I can send that out.
Okay, I appreciate that.
And that was the last item that we've been tracking.
All right, thank you. Looks like next up is the Cheyenne Mountain and is it Schreiber? I think outstanding migrations. Any update on those?
Those are still, we're still waiting.
Okay. Okay. Next is the OSP migration.
Yes, that is back at us as well. I know, let me look through here real quick. So this is something that was brought over to my attention just recently, and I've invited Judy, and I'm trying to see if Cameron is on as well from our side. They're kind of leading this internally, and we wanted to include them in the call today because they have the history on this. It's basically some OSP connectivity plans for Colorado, and we, I'll let Judy expand, but we're kind of ready to kick this off right now. What you're looking at is a letter that we would like to send out to all of the PSAPs, just kind of giving them a notification of what's happening, as well as who to contact within Lumen if they need some help. The ask also to this team is if once we are ready to do test calls with the PSAPs, if we can reach out to them and schedule that as well. And like I said, if you guys have additional questions or some technical questions come up, I do have Judy from Lumen on. She's done this before and is helping with Colorado.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions?
This is Daryl, just adding on a little bit. I'm very glad to see that CenturyLink is ready to take this next step. I do want to point out that what the requirements are for originating service providers to provide calls in I3 format or SIP format to 911 networks is the topic of a current FCC notice of proposed rulemaking. I would guess that some of the OSPs probably would want to wait until that process is complete before they do anything, or before they comply with the request. But on the other hand, some of the carriers may be ready to do it right now and just been waiting for CenturyLink to be ready. So you should be able to make some progress now, even with that NPRM still underway. One question I have regarding the letter, on that second paragraph, it starts with the state of Colorado requests, and that would raise the question to me, if it's I know this letter is going to the PSAPs, but if this went to an OSP, as an OSP, I would ask, well, what does that mean? Who in the state of Colorado is requesting? So I don't know if we need to clarify that as CenturyLink or Lumen on behalf, as the 911 system service provider for Colorado requests, or maybe we say the ESInet users group requests or something along those lines. But that's just something that jumped out at me when I was looking at this letter.
Okay. Well, let me introduce you guys to Dylan Kramer. He is on the bridge from Lumen, and we kind of all crafted that letter together. So if there's something that needs to be tweaked or changed, this is why we wanted to have this discussion today. So, Dylan, I don't think there's an issue with that. Looks like he's trying to get off mute.
Hi, Dylan. If you're speaking, we can't hear you.
No.
We see your microphone turning on and off, though.
Might have to circle back with him offline. Judy,
Yeah.
do you come off the microphone?
How's that?
I can hear you. Dylan, we can't quite hear you. Is that something that we can clarify in the letter before it is sent out, do you think?
Okay, I'll speak on behalf of Dylan. Can you see me? I want to make sure you get to meet me on video.
We are not seeing your video,
No.
but we can hear you.
Oh,
there you are.
You are.
Hello. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I want to make sure you know that Dylan Kramer is the OSP coordinator. He is the point of contact to reach out to the OSPs in the state of Colorado, but he hasn't done that. He's doing all the due diligence to reconnect with Tracy and this team to receive your approval and your comfort level in drafting this letter. This is the first draft, version 1. And we invite your feedback in redlining it and getting it to the format that is acceptable to you. So however time you need, or if you want to use a user group, or however you want to word it that is appropriate, we welcome that. I do want to make sure that you know that Dylan Kramer and I dotted line report to Tracy Dillow. So she is the lead program manager on this project for Lumen, and we support her success in getting the OSP connectivity to the state of Colorado ESInet solution. So that's our role, and we will do it when Tracy gives us her thumbs up, and she will, of course, include you in that approval process. So I want to pause right there. There are two things that I do want to share with you on what I need, but I want to pause to see if you have any questions on Dylan's role and my role.
So far, so good, Judy.
Okay, Thank you so much. So would you like to propose, Daryl and Kathy, how long you'd like to have to review this letter and to just sort of give us the revision that you'd like to make to the letter? Is there a time frame that works best for you? What do you think are the next steps?
Well, I think that everyone in this group should be able to review it and send in any comments or suggestions for changes. Joe has raised his hand. Go ahead, Joe.
Is this directed towards the wireless and VoIP providers, or is this also directed towards the ILECs?
Thank you, Joseph. It's for all originating service providers. That's OSP, borrowing the NINA acronym. All originating service providers. That's wireless, VoIP, and wireline, and anywhere in between.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about this introduction letter? It's a welcome letter that the purpose of this letter is to let the OSP know the legitimacy of our request, the legitimacy that the ESInet is accepting origination traffic to the Colorado solution, the NG01 solution.
Okay, Jackie, you have a question?
Yeah, so in requesting location-based routing from the carriers in those forms, do we need something like this from CenturyLink to prove our readiness?
Jackie, are you asking Judy Okondi, Lumen?
Yes, I'm sorry. So when we're sending out our letters to the carrier, the wireless carriers, to ask for location-based routing, is this a document we will need in order to prove that our PSAPs are ready to receive the location-based routing?
We will only send this letter when the PSAP is done to receive location-based routing. If you need the PSAPs to be upgraded to receive location-based routing before this letter is sent out, we can wait until that timing works. I hope I have answered your question, but the PSAP readiness has to come first before this letter goes out, if that's what you mean.
So
about
that
the
is what I
timing.
mean. So that is kind of what I mean, but I'm just trying to figure out, how do we know that a PSAP is ready? Is that,
No, Jackie, this is Daryl. I think we're confusing two different things, because the location-based routing that the wireless carriers are doing, that the FCC is requiring them to do, is all on, or going to be requiring them to do, they haven't finalized the rules yet, is all on the carrier side. It has nothing to do with our network. So
Okay.
that will happen regardless of whether or not CenturyLink is receiving the call in IP format or not.
Great, thank you.
All right.
And just one second, sorry. Tracy Oldmeyer has put several things in the chat. Tracy, do you want to speak to anything? I know you raised your hand.
Thank you. Daryl mentioned this proposed rulemaking, so I just wanted to make sure it was on the governing body's radar as well, and I attached the link to the notice of proposed rulemakings. But one of the issues in that FCC proceeding is requiring OSPs to cover the costs of getting calls to the point designated by the authority and things like that. So that's just one of the issues in that notice of proposed rulemaking that I think should be on everybody's radar, and wanted to make sure you had access to the document.
Yeah, and I'll also point out, NASNA, I know, is going to be filing comments. I plan on drafting some comments for the Public Utilities Commission to consider, but I think the task force wanted to file comments, or individual 911 authorities and PSAPs wanted to file comments. I think the FCC would welcome that, and that would really help inform that process.
All right. So would you like to, I just want to make sure I capture what Tracy just said. If you feel that that point, the costs coverage, who is responsible for the cost, if you feel that point needs to be put in this letter, it's really up to you. This is free flow. You're welcome to edit in any way you like to represent your best interest.
You know, and I appreciate that. I'm legal counsel, and so I would defer to Lumen on what it wants to include in its communication, but I didn't want recipients of this, they're probably already aware of the FCC proceeding as OSP. So just for completeness, I was bringing it to this conversation, but it had nothing to do with suggested edits or revisions to Lumen's letter.
Go ahead, Daryl.
Copy that.
Yeah, I would suggest just so we keep this moving for CenturyLink, because they're obviously ready to send this out as soon as we are able to let them know that we're comfortable with it, that we give people a week, give them a 1-week deadline to provide feedback. And then ultimately it's up to you, CenturyLink, to decide which feedback, because this is your letter, you want to accept and what you don't. I would suggest not including information about who is responsible for the cost, because while that's a open question in some states, Colorado has no cost recovery for 911 compliance for local originating service providers. So I wouldn't even bring it up, because that may make them think it's an option to argue, whereas it's not under our statute.
So Daryl,
Thanks for.
Sorry, Judy.
Okay.
Is it fair then to, if you guys have changes or comments that you want to make on this letter, you could send them to me sometime between now and the end of the day next Tuesday, and then I can get the information to the correct folks at Lumen. Does that work?
I think that'll be fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Tracy, so much for closing that for us. The second objective, if I may proceed, Tracy, is that okay? Is there time for me to speak? I can stop if you want me to.
No, let's go ahead and do this one, just simply because we do want to get this out as soon as we can. So let's make sure everybody's on the same page.
Sounds good. So we consulted with Tracy and we asked for a list of NG911 capable PSAPs. So Tracy produced a list for us, and it's PSAPs that are accepting OSP calls, and it's right around 97. It excludes backup PSAPs, it excludes PSLE, PSAP names, it excludes secondary PSAP. So the number we came up with was 97 that are NG911 capable. Is anyone on the team willing to just validate that list to make sure it's the right list? Because we are afraid that if we give it to the OSPs and it's incorrect, we just want to do our due diligence, make sure that it looks solid to you.
This is Daryl. So we've had this issue when we did the migration to the ESInet, is we only have 85 PSAPs in Colorado, but that's not including backup sites, if any of those are on your list, or some PSAPs have two different locations that they receive 911 calls from CenturyLink, and so both of those might be listed separately. So if you would want to send me that list, I can go through it and see if there's anything on there that needs to be verified with the local agency, and then I can reach out to them to do that.
Thank you, Daryl, for taking that on. The spreadsheet we have is the raw data. Tracy, if you wouldn't mind sending that over, the one that we got from Teams, and you can add a column or say this release this, or however you like to indicate that releasable PSAP. That would be great. And if you could also validate the address, if that's okay, and the FCC ID, would you be willing to confirm those three critical data: the name, the address, and the FCC ID?
I may not always have the local address, but I do have all the FCC IDs. If I don't have the local address, I can reach out to the agency and get it. Thank
you, Daryl. Appreciate that. And then I have one more request. The request is, what is the state of Colorado's agreed upon default routing? I need to know, out of that list of PSAPs you validate, which one of those are confirmed to be default PSAPs and for whom, if there is a no record found. Daryl, may I elect you to confirm that too?
I can work on that. That has actually been a topic of some discussion within this users group, because we were originally told that all calls would default route to one PSAP, and that was the city of Aurora. But then we found out later that calls were default routing to other PSAPs as well. So we don't even necessarily know which PSAPs are being used as our default routing PSAPs. That's something we would actually like to get clarified.
Okay, sounds great. We we will pause, and this sounds like you might need more than a week to confirm that. Is that true?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay. What's your estimation?
We can shoot for 2 weeks and then maybe touch base again in a week and a half and see where we're at.
Let's do that. So the 25th of July, does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay. For default routing. And then last point, I thought I had three, but this is my fourth point. I wanted to share with you that we can pause as long as you like. There's one particular OSP that has an assertive deployment plan. They are called Allo Communications, based out of Lincoln, Nebraska. They have already activated with Lumen 2 diverse SIP circuits. They're single mode fiber, 1 gig circuit to the Lumen SBCs, session border controllers out of Highlands Ranch and Chicago. We've done the physical layer 1 activation, and we've already done a logical configuration to Nebraska. Nebraska is in the same timeline as Colorado, and Nebraska is eager to have Allo live, and that is effective March of this year. They are live in Nebraska. They have an amazing amount of bandwidth because they already ordered the 2 gigs. Now they are eager to deploy Colorado. They would like to receive your approval if they could go first to go ahead and activate it for Colorado. I think it's your comfort level. We can pause on the other OSPs, but Allo specifically would like to deploy in the first week of August, if that's possible. What that means is that we are approved to make PSAP testing the first week of August if you allow. But if you don't, I'm happy to tell them that you're not ready yet and that we could wait a little longer. And if you could give me a time frame, that would be fine.
Well, I think,
go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead, Judy.
Kathy, that would mean that if you authorize them to go to do PSAP testing the first week of August, that means we would have to have a decision on default routing by then. And so if you need more timing, let's say on the 25th, you need more time, then that could, then I could go back to the OSP Allo and say, Dylan and I would, that we need a little more time. We think that perhaps September we could activate you for Colorado.
I would have to agree with that. It's July 12th already, and Daryl's offered, and we thank him very much for doing that work, but he may not have that in 2 weeks. And so I don't want to let anybody know, yeah, we're going to be ready to go in August, because I kind of have my doubts about that.
All right.
And just because of the amount of information or what we're trying to find out may not be as easy to get. And Joe, go ahead.
It might be helpful to know what exactly the PSAP testing involves.
Yes, Joseph. The PSAP testing involves a primary test per side. So that would be one side on the Highlands Ranch and one side on the Chicago. So that would be a total of 2 calls for the PSAP, and then also a 3rd call minimum to verify no record found. That it would default to the city of Aurora, for example. If that's your designated default, we want to verify a city of Aurora default routing, and we also wanted to verify a primary routing to the PSAP that does have location. So that's a primary call with Annie Alley display. That's 2. Highlands Ranch, Chicago, it's destination for diversity. And then the 3rd call would be the default. This would be on a per PSAP basis.
Go ahead, Joe.
So that would be 2 calls, test calls to each PSAP, and a whole bunch of calls to default PSAPs And at what time do you do this?
Well, we would do it the time frame that you accept. If you have non-peak hours during business hours, let's say, I'm just saying after your peak hour, let's say 10 to noon, if that is deemed non-peak hours, we can specify that requirement.
You're not able to do it at 2 a.m.
We don't have resources at 2 a.m., but if you require that, then I think they'll just have to make that accommodate you. So I think if that's really a strong requirement, I'm willing to share that.
Yeah, I can for the PSAPs, but I think the PSAPs need to know what was involved in the testing before they could, address it.
Yeah, and for any given PSAP, even if we said 10 a.m. to noon, they could be inundated. You just don't know what's going to happen. So I don't think that kind of testing that probably needs to take place later on. If we could do overnight testing, that's probably the best time, quote unquote, to ensure that they'll be able to receive those calls without interrupting actual emergency calls that are going in. But if anybody else has a different idea about timing for this, please, let us know please speak up. Kim, go ahead.
So Judy, do we know their footprint for service? So for example, when carriers come out and they do testing, it's typically because they're providing service or turning up a new service. Is this carrier looking at turning up the new service for all of Colorado? So are we looking at an entire state test plan to those calls to the PSAPs, or are we looking at particular areas like in the west or the eastern area if they're expanding from Nebraska over to Colorado?
That's a great question, Kimberly. Thank you for bringing that up. We have scheduled a meeting with Allo Communications on the 25th. That's our next meeting with them, and that was on the agenda to cover where they're at. Their service area is not ubiquitous in Colorado. It is the metropolitan area and growing. So they have a footprint. They're planning to grow, but the current footprint is going to be likely the major metro areas. And we can get that list in 2 weeks and share it with the next user meeting after that meeting with Allo. Does that sound like something we could deliver to you at that time?
From my perspective, I think that sounds great. I mean, typically carriers test, we get notified of testing often when carriers are turning up service. And so we may be looking at, again, just a handful of test calls to a few PSAPs where they're wanting to test this new service. So if we know their deployment plan, I think that would be very helpful.
Copy that. Go ahead, Dylan.
So currently I see for their legacy stuff that we have them built for Morgan County, Summit County, and Weld County. But like Judy said, we will get clarification with them once we have the more precise PSAP list of what's currently capable and see what those service areas are. So limited information on their footprint right now. We're still working with them on that.
Okay, I think just having all that information, I would rather push back the testing. It's my thought. Push it back until you have all the information that you need. In Judy, the FCC IDs and the default routing. I'm not even sure at this point that we should even state, yeah, we're going to test. You can test in September. You can test in. I think we need to do one step first and then figure out what the next step is after that. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that? Okay, Judy, does that work for you?
Yeah, that works great. If let's just have an exit strategy. If Allo feels strongly that they'd like to present to them their position, because they told us that they have a very assertive deployment plan. If they have a compelling need to deploy sooner, would you be open to having them speak to this forum and have Allo be here, or do you feel that's not necessary?
No, we would be open to having them speak. That would be fine.
Okay.
And
All
Jeff asked in the chat if this, if the NG911 OSP connectivity plan for the state, if the document can be shared.
I would say we want to share it with this group first until we get it finalized, right? So we want input from the ESInet team. And then once we have the language correctly that everyone has agreed to, which I think we can still do by next week, Judy, then it would be kind of finalized in public anyways, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
May
so
I-
basically,
Mhm.
sorry, we have two things that we need to get done. We need
Yeah,
to have comments and changes or suggestions of changes sent back in a week. And then Daryl's going to be working on his part of it, which is 2 weeks. At that point, we're almost to the end of July already. So why don't we get those two things done first? And then we can certainly, talk by email or, even have phone conversations to see where we are with testing. And you can reach out to the company and just let them know, what we're doing. Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, just a comment. I mean, your CenturyLink's relationship with the OSPs is between CenturyLink and the OSPs. I would recommend against letting them call the shots on the scheduling, because if you let every individual OSP tell you when they want to migrate, it's going to be a mess. So, I appreciate them wanting to have an aggressive migration schedule, but if you guys aren't ready and we're not ready, then they need to be told that they can't do it yet. That's just my opinion.
Copy that, Daryl. Thanks for sharing your expectations. It's just thinking ahead, not that we need to act on it. Thinking ahead, I wanted to share with you that in Nebraska, when they are ready to do OSP migration to the ESInet, Nebraska asks Lumen to communicate via email to the individual PSAPs we are scheduled to test with on behalf of the OSP. So Lumen, on behalf of the OSP, let's just use Allo as an example. We said Allo wishes to test with you 3 calls per PSAP, let's say, at this date, at this time, here's the window, 10 to noon, and for these PSAPs, 3 calls, and it's an opt-out email. If you disagree with this schedule, then please let us know your preferred time. And 10 out of 10, they accept the schedule. If that's not the way you want to do it, I would like for someone to inform me of how you'd like us to request for approval for PSAP testing. So we definitely want to do it the way you like to do it. So you don't have to answer that right here, but you can let us know.
Okay, and also, Daryl, just so you know, Matt just put in the chat, is that the Western Slope is still going to Grand Junction for default routing. That essentially the area of old GJT Montrose selective routers.
Understood. Yeah, that's my understanding, is that the selective routing, even though we were originally told it was all going to go to one city of Aurora, just because they were the first one to migrate, they're actually being routed based on where the old selective routers were.
Okay.
So we'll see if that matches what CenturyLink sends me, and then I can confirm that with the PSAPs to make sure that they're still good with that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
If I could just jump in on that. That was made by, as Matt just put it in the chat, that was made by choice after Western Slope decided they did not want all of their calls going to the other side of the mountains. So as far as I understand, there should be 2 default routes, one for the Western Slope going to Grand Junction and one for everyone else going to Aurora. Oh, and thank you, Kimberly, for correcting me. I didn't realize there were 3. Perfect.
Kimberly, weren't you receiving some default routes as well at one of your PSAPs?
Yeah, unfortunately we still do. A lot of it's carrier driven, but there is some confusion, and I'll send you those emails, Daryl, that has to do with your old landline type of phone service, where those are defaulting more at the local level than at the selective router. So still don't really understand that, which Lumen's some additional information. Lumen could be helpful with that, but I'll send over that documentation to you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Jennifer, for clarifying the history of this.
Okay, anything else, Judy?
No, that's it. So I just need somebody willingness to give Dylan the procedure to schedule PSAP testing when you're ready, of course, but just if someone wants to take that one on.
I can take care of that. That's fine.
Oh, thanks. Okay, thanks, Kathy. Okay, that's it, Kathy.
I just have one more comment, and that's in that first paragraph. I appreciate the references to the NENA I3 standard and sort of the confirmation that that is the goal, is to move towards the NENA I3 standard. That hasn't always been clearly stated in all of the project material regarding the ESInet. So I just wanted to express my appreciation for including that.
Oh, Daryl, thank you so much. I like it when we receive acknowledgement that we did something right. And of course, there's always things that could go wrong. I also appreciate this conversation that just came about default routing. We definitely want to get our hands around the default routing and get it right for you. And Dylan can control that through the trunk group name. I just want to let you know that in the technical world, we build the trunk group name to the default route of your choice. And so if there's no location, the NGCS provider, in this case, Intrado, sees the trunk group name that's on the SIP invite. And when they see that particular string that's provisioned, it's designated, the trunk group name's designated to the default that you give us, and it would go there. So we have full control of that. But we got to get that decision made whenever you so if it's the 3 default routes, we will build the trunk group name to that default PSAP. And that's how the default routing will work. It's based on that trunk group name. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, well, I guess we've got a few things we got to take care of in the next couple of weeks. Again, thank you, Daryl, for taking that on. I appreciate it.
I'm going to make Jennifer do it all.
I know. I kind of figured it was going to roll that way.
Daryl, I'll send you that list right after this meeting. If you look at it and we think we're going to need more time, just let me know and I can share that with Dylan and Judy.
Thank you.
We want it to be accurate. So if it takes more time, it takes more time.
And thank you, Jennifer, for taking on what Daryl is going to give you. So appreciate that.
Happy to help. That's what I signed on for.
Okay, let's, I think we can move forward. I think we've discussed that. The quarterly QoS statistics.
Yeah, I know we're kind of running short on time today. This is same old, which is good, right? We don't have anything glaring or pointing out issues to my knock, which is great. The test completion codes are on that first page. This is just network performance, making sure that 911 calls are going to go through. As a reminder, it's each probe is called every 7 minutes. So this is just showing us the completion date for the month. Switch over to my next one. This goes by PSAP. A second here. Again, we're looking for higher numbers. Anything, 1 is bad, 5 is excellent. Everything that we have for the month based on PSAPs is right above that 4 line, which is excellent. That's what we're hoping to see. The next graph that is sent out, this is basically Longmont versus Miami. Goes by our ECMC route. It's the same as the one above. 1 is bad, a 5 is excellent. Our knock is triggered on anything that drops below a 3.5. So everything looking good as far as the ECMC route this month. The next one, I think the packet last that we'll go ahead and look at. Got my sheets out of line here. This one, we look for the lower the better. So anything less than or equal to the 0.5% is what's going to trigger validation on our side. That's what the tariff is asking us to look for. So again, nothing too exciting on that one. The next one, I believe, is jitter that we take a look at. Again, this one, excuse me, if you take a peek at it, the tariff is milliseconds, and we measure in microseconds, because if we did not do that, this chart would be very difficult to see. Again, nothing new and exciting on this. We're well within what we expect to have for the jitter.
Tracy, not to belabor this because I know we're short on time, but on this first one, that last bar at the very far right of the chart is much lower than the others.
Let me pull up my spreadsheet real quick and look at that.
Sure.
So you are correct. That's on the last day. It looks like it was the timing that this was pulled out of our Splunk database. So let me just pull the date again, because that is not capturing the full day. It's only capturing it until 8 a.m. So let me pull that again, and I will send a refresh version today.
Okay. It's not a big deal. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't something we needed to pay attention to.
I'm going to pull it again, because for some reason, usually this pulls, it's supposed to automatically pull at midnight, well, 11:59 p.m. And I can see on the spreadsheet data here that it did not. It pulled it at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
So Kathy, I will rerun. I can't just rerun this graph. I have to pull the whole thing, but I'll send you an updated one so that you can use that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. All right. Next up, we have the ECATS deployment update. Tim, are you still on with us? Yes.
I'm still here. So on ECATS, I think we have got a final schedule. We're just kind of fine tuning a couple of things on it. At the end of last week, I had a question. I haven't seen an answer back on that. So we should have a schedule out to you all very, very soon with how we're going to deploy this. We're beginning the ordering of the equipment that's needed to be installed. So we're getting there. It's definitely moving, and you should be seeing a schedule here super soon on how we're going to roll this out across the state. Our goal is still to complete all of this by the end of the year for everyone.
Okay. Thank you. And just as a reminder, I don't know if you can't remember if you were on our last meeting, but Kimberly from LEDA has asked to be in the top part of the rollout. Okay, Daryl. Oh, hang on. Oh, Kimberly says yes, please. We need an early deployment. Okay, Lumen NOC update on responsiveness. Daryl, any update on that?
I have received no further reports, but this is just a reminder that if you have issues with the NOC putting you on hold for extended periods of time or not being able to answer your call when you call, let me know, because I'm tracking those for this group. There was one outage investigation that I was working on where there were some extended hold times reported with the NOC. But other than that, nobody has reached out to me to specifically report a NOC problem.
All right, thank you. Next, we have the parking lot document. If there's any items in the parking lot that members would like to discuss, can bring them up. And we have 5 things in there right now. Is there anything in there that anybody wants to talk about? I know we're getting close to the hour, but I still want to give everybody the opportunity. I hear nothing. Okay. New business. I think we already discussed that first one, unless Daryl, you have something else you want to speak to. Otherwise, go to the 911 outage issue, please.
Yeah, I think we've covered the 911 area code calls. Just if anybody has any data, please send that to me, as I just said earlier. On 911 outage issues, I don't have a better way to put this, but CenturyLink has, to a large extent, stopped reporting 911 outages to the commission. As sort of a compromise, recently we've been added onto the email notifications that the PSAPs receive. So every time a PSAP gets an email notification from Lumen, we get it as well. The problem with that is that there are so many of those that turn out to be false alarms, and we're getting them statewide for every PSAP, that it's very difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff on that. So I will be having some discussions internally as to how we can potentially address this matter. But in the meantime, I would ask that PSAPs let me know if they have an outage, because I may not be aware of it. And I want to make sure that the statistics that we have for trending analysis to see whether outages are getting better or worse from year to year, that is very difficult to do if I don't have good statistics as to how many outages we're having and the frequency of outages that we're having. Not to mention the fact that I can't do investigations as are required under the commission's rules if I don't know that an outage has even occurred. So I would ask that people let me know or let Jennifer know, actually preferably let Jennifer know, because she's tracking those in a spreadsheet right now, and we can go from there. And I'll keep everyone updated on what's potentially happening with that in the future.
Go ahead, Andrew.
And you may have addressed this previously, but can we get an answer as to why those reports have stopped coming to you?
Well, I can summarize it. I don't, with CenturyLink on the call, I don't know if I want to put words in CenturyLink's mouth.
And that's what I meant. We have CenturyLink on the call. Can we get an answer?
Tim, do you want to try to summarize what's happening with that, or would you like me to?
I can take a shot at it. So when a call gets rerouted within 30 minutes, it's our belief that does not constitute an outage that would be reportable. And with the configuration of the ESInet, those calls get transferred seamlessly and quickly, therefore not triggering our system to send an outage to the commission.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that was it.
So that is one response that I've received. The other response, Tim, that I receive sometimes is that the outage that occurs, if it's a fiber cut that isolates a central office that keeps calls from getting to the selective router, that it is CenturyLink's position that is an originating service provider outage and not a basic emergency service outage, even if the same path is also used as basic emergency service.
Right. Yeah. It depends on where the event took place, but yes, that is also another reason.
And the end result is we used to get notifications every time there was a PSAP that was down hard, unable to receive 911 calls or ALI, and now we don't. So that's the end result of that disagreement of interpretation. We'll just put it that way. So in the meantime, until this is resolved, I'm asking PSAPs to just let us know if they are down. And what I mean by that is not your admin lines, not anything else, your 911 lines. are down, or you are unable to receive any alley. Those are the things that we're looking for.
All right, thank you, Daryl. Andrew, that answer your question?
Not really, but I think it's as far as we're going to get today.
Okay, thank you. Matt, go ahead.
I just want to reinforce the need for notification to the PSAPs where we have condition 4 routing circumstances that are automated. If our PSAPs don't know about these, regardless of how short they are, we don't know to then radio to our partners at those remote COs that they need to start manning those condition 4 routed phone lines immediately.
All right. Any thoughts on that from anybody? Daryl or Tim? Nope.
I obviously I agree. I think, you know, if there's condition 4 routing put in place, the PSAP obviously needs to know, because otherwise those calls are potentially going to a phone number that's not manned and nobody's answering.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Daryl, anything else on that? Or are we ready to move on?
We're ready.
Okay. Next is open discussion. Questions or concerns from PSAPs to Lumen? Hearing none. Next is any open issues from Lumen to PSAPs.
I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you. And finally, we have non-voting members are welcome to provide comments during this portion of the meeting. So anybody, non-voting member who would like to speak? Hearing nothing, we will go to adjournment at 10:59. We made it just under the 1 hour mark. Thank you, everybody, for your time. I appreciate it.
That's good meeting management, Kathy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.